Hello there, welcome to the PlugBox Podcast, where we discuss all things EV and renewables and generally have a damn good chinwag. Anyway, on with the show. Hello there.
Good evening. How are you, first of all?
Splendid. Another week,
Good.
Another PlugBox Podcast.
Yeah, and we are up to episode number 7 this week. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Please, if you haven't done so already, like and subscribe on YouTube. We have got previous episodes there available for everybody to listen to. We've covered a lot of subjects, actually, over the previous weeks, but I think we've got a few more items today, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, both you and I are cars. I think you're maybe of an age, shall we say, where you don't keep up with every latest bit of news, but...
some of us have to work for a living, Pete.
That's getting it. Well, you know, we won't talk about the thingy, but yes. But me included, actually, I don't really keep up with, the latest supercar here and the latest hatchback there, but in the world of all things EVs and renewables, there always seems to be some news literally every single day that piques my interest. And as I say, yeah, there's always something new.
Yeah, I think one of the things actually that caught both of our interests today, we'll come on to a little bit later, is the ID4 GTX was revealed earlier today. So we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the episode. I think we're also going to cover maybe just a little bit of analysis on some of the first drives of the Porsche Cross Turismo, which is a favourite of yours.
Oh, yes.
A few lucky people have got their hands on that. And also the Ioniq 5, which I think we covered in our first podcast. Now journalists are starting to get their hands on that, and the feedback is interesting, very positive. So maybe we can.
And people doing some very funky stuff with it as well.
Oh, I like it. Already I like it. But yeah, we'll come on to that a bit later. But I think, first of all, if I can, I want to talk about patios. Is that all right?
Well, I mean, it's fine by me. I don't personally have a patio, but you carry on.
Give it time. So, just an interesting one. I don't know how new this concept is, but something popped up on my Twitter feed, as is often the case, same with a lot of people, about a company called Patio. So, as you know, I'm a bit of an advocate of all things solar energy, solar panels, but the conventional way of installing solar panels is usually a roof, or in more recent times, littering a green field full of them and calling it a solar farm. But Patio is actually a Budapest-based green tech company who are manufacturing what can only be described as solar pavements or solar driveways, hence the name Patio. So they are designing a paving solution that makes solar technology part of what they're saying is modern architecture. But I think this is an interesting concept. So they're using other available space for electricity generation, which I think is a really positive move. And I like the way they're thinking.
Can I ask a really stupid question?
Of course you may.
I mean, I'm not asking it for myself. I'm asking for any potential listener. But Patio.
Yes.
I don't get it.
No, Patio. Well, it's their company name first and foremost, and I guess it's a play on patio. Can't honestly say. They're calling it a solar pavement. It's a company based in Hungary, as we've mentioned, so possibly it's a play from them. Can't answer.
It's like, what's the portmanteau for Patio? Like, I get patio, but the L? Anyway, I digress. Well off piste.
Maybe their URL wasn't available. Not like ours.
We all have those issues.
Is available. We have a website. You can visit it at www.plugbox.co.uk. So, yeah, I think Patio, an interesting little company. They're trying something different. Looks like a startup company that was created in 2015, so they've been going 5 years or so. And these solar panels that are modular and square can be purchased now, so they can be bought. They come in 3 meter square sizes, 0.5 kWp it says, so it's relatively small, but I like the way they're thinking, and I thought it was a bit off the wall to mention here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, again, when you look at the physics of it, enough energy arrives from the sun every day to power all our needs for a year. So literally one day, enough energy arrives to power everything, boats, planes, trains, heatings, transportation, cement, cooking, all the rest of it. So we just need to capture it. So anything we can do to use some surface area to gather that energy from the sun's great. The only thing I would think is maybe similar to the Tesla solar roof is when you try and make something look aesthetic, like a roof tile or a patio tile, does that then give you some headache? Because invariably it's not going to be as good, right, as a solar panel. But
that's correct.
It's a compromise between the two. But I guess it's a good idea in principle. I can only hope one day to own a patio.
You will. You'll get there. I think just to counteract that argument, of course, a solar tile is typically smaller than a panel. So maybe if you've got an odd-shaped roof, you can cover more of the surface area, even if perhaps they don't generate as much as a dedicated panel. You could possibly compensate. And of course, there'll be those people that simply don't want panels because they don't consider them aesthetically pleasing enough for their precious homes.
Very true. Or people with thatched roofs.
Well, thatched roofs, yes. And of course, anybody with protected houses here in the UK. So if they're listed, you can't alter the exterior of them in any way. So maybe cover your driveway in these and then park your car on top of it so that you can't generate power. But anyway, nice little idea there, I think. And you can buy them. You can get them now, which is so it's not a concept. You can get them. Solar tiles, of course, are not available, I don't believe, in the UK yet from Tesla. More and more people in the US are adopting them, but not here yet. All right. What shall we move on to next, Pete? Should we talk about ID4?
Ooh, so this is fresh off the press. And I know you haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I would advise anyone to go look at the presentation. It was still, how should we say? It was still a bit of an awkward trying not to be corporate launch, if I can put it that way. But the way in which they launched the car, obviously in the digital launch space that we're now in, was quite innovative. So as I say, I would advise people to go look at it. But in terms of headline figures, is it a bit
more palatable than their presentation not so long ago that was in excess of 2 hours?
Yeah, so it's about 20 minutes long, I would say, roughly 20 minutes. So
very tolerable. Okay, good.
Power Day, I think, right, was where they talked about batteries and stuff is. It had some good stuff in there, but, it was maybe 15, 20 minutes of the 2 hours was actually useful information, whereas this one was kind of nice presentation, some key stats and whatever. There was a nice teaser at the end, which maybe I'll comment on as well. But no, fundamentally, obviously, the ID4 now has been rolled out, and of course, is unlike the ID3, is going to be a global car, so manufactured in the US, China, and Europe. And the GTX is now going to be the performance sub-brand for Volkswagen cars, not the brand. The brand, sorry.
So,
not the group.
Is this a nod towards GTI?
Yeah, so that was one of
heritage?
slightly uncomfortable moment. So yeah, you're absolutely right in saying that it's a derivation of GTI, which has got a 40+ year history now. But one of the things in the presentation for GTX was they mentioned GTD, which for anyone that doesn't know is the diesel performance variant of Golfs, and it's just like, really, guys? Like, okay, GTI for the lineage and to set the context and the history and blah blah blah, fine. And of course, that's where GTX has come from. But to mention GTDs,
from VW,
maybe not prudent.
Dangerous game.
But GTX in the same vein as GTI, there's a few GTI products that up GTI, and of course the Golf GTI. GTX will be the performance sub-brand within the ID family sub-brand of the Volkswagen brand. A lot of subs, but anyway, yes. So it's going to be the performance variant of the ID family of cars.
Clearly, the most important question to ask at this point is, does it come with tartan fabric on the seats?
I don't think it does,
Well,
I could well be wrong. I don't think it does. And
there are a number of classic things related to GTI, which I would hope would carry it across. And the tartan seats, and they often had sort of the red trim or accent pieces on the interior and exterior of the car. I wonder if that's made it through. As I say, I've not caught up with this video yet. I can see a few images on the screen in front of me. The press shots, the vehicle is red, so you can't see any naturally obvious accent parts of the car, certainly in red. But honestly, it doesn't look that different. It's not.
No, the front and rear bumper valences are a bit different, but yeah, as you say, there's not much else to it. In the presentation, there's a quick, not even call it scene, but there's a quick moment where they demonstrated the rear brake lights, which when you apply the brakes, the brake lights are in like an X, similar to the Mini. Okay. So they were saying, GTX DNA, and it's got an X in the rear lamps and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's not so different to the regular ID4.
So do you think the performance warrants the GTX brand? Does it meet expectations of those of our listeners that have grown up with the Golf GTIs or even the Polo GTIs over time?
I mean, when you compare it to the Golf GTI, right, it's got very similar power levels. So this ID4 GTX, a lot of letters, has got about 300 horsepower or 300 PS metric horsepower. I think that's 200-ish kilowatts, 220. Anyway, about 300 horsepower anyway in black and white, and will go pretty much 300 miles. But the 0 to 60 is like 6-ish seconds, which you can say, okay, that's it's not slow, but compared to a GTI or one step up like the Golf R or the Tiguan R or T-Roc R or all those sort of variants that equally have got about 300 horsepower, it's slower, which to me doesn't compute. Like, we know it will have more torque. It will come in instantly. It's four-wheel drive. So it kind of feels to me like they're almost muzzling it, in the sense of the very first showing can't be, sub 3 seconds, because where did they go in 4 years' time for the facelift, or where did they go in 7 years' time for the new model? So it kind of feels like they're sandbagging a little bit, because, as I say, similar combustion-based products do more with less.
Forgive my naivety and perhaps lack of intelligence here, but you've got a GTX branded, top-of-the-range performance-focused electric version of the ID4. Performance figures are marginally better. It looks the same. Where Where's the customer getting their value for their money? Presumably it costs more, being top spec.
Yeah, so I think, if memory serves, it starts from about €50,000,
Okay.
which is a good chunk of cash. Of course, in Europe, the tax is included in that figure, as opposed to in the US, where it's separate. So maybe take 20% off that price. But yeah, starting from €50,000, it's not a cheap car. So you would imagine in the UK, once you've thrown a few options on, because invariably it's a German car, so there'll be a very long options list. You're probably going to be talking about a £50,000 car. And as you say, I don't see where the value is, because it don't go further, and it's marginally quicker. But
But being a quite occupant-centric kind of person, I've found images of the interior. It doesn't have tartan seats, but it does have a red accent stitch on the seating. It has a embossed GTX logo, and on the cockpit module and steering wheel, I can see some red gloss accent lines as well. But again,
does that make it worth £50,000?
Well, that's my question, and I'm not saying this to be awkward, but as a consumer, I'm just wondering where my money goes compared to the regular version. So it's nice that we're getting a performance version, but I think there needs to be some substance behind the name, perhaps.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think certainly in the performance point of view, they're kind of sandbagging to allow themselves some room for manoeuvre in future products. But I think the main thing, and to be big picture, is this is a first stab at a kind of performance EV, in the sense of like GTI, or like M, or like AMG, stuff like this. So I think VW is setting out the stall that they're going to have the ID family range, and for each of those, there's going to be a performance arm or performance variant, and then classic automotive. Then it gives you a kind of top of the tree product, and I'm sure there'll be a GTX line in the same vein that there's a GT line of ICE cars, or a M Sport or AMG line, S line, all that sort of stuff.
S line, that's the one that springs to mind.
Yeah, but, and of course, one of the things that was...
I was going to say, it's a big car. To have a performance version of that car is quite something anyway. So, yeah. And actually, to their credit, I've seen quite a few of them on the road here in the UK already. So they're already moving out,
and there'll always be customers that want something sporty, or they want the most expensive one. So no doubt that'll cater for this. And one of the things right at the end of this product launch was they teased the ID5 and ID5 GTX. So effectively the coupe version of the ID4. So standard at this point is they've released an SUV, and now they're going to release an SUV that's got less boot space and charge you more for it. So, well-trodden path there.
Yeah. I'm surprised that they've announced this one, if anything, before the ID3 sportier variant. I guess GTI origins are generally associated with Golf, and no matter what we say, I think ID3 is their Golf equivalent, just electric. So, yeah, it's unusual that they've decided to go with the performance version of the bigger car. Anyway, good luck to them.
And from one performance car to another...
Segue alert. Yeah, okay.
Did you appreciate my segue?
Always.
Can we talk about the Porsche Taycan Cross Turismo again?
Yeah.
So we discussed this in podcast past. So of course, as Pete said at the top of the show, please go check the YouTubes, because we did quite a long segment when this was unveiled. But now the dynamic tests have taken place. So journalists all around the world have been getting in them and hooning them around and having great fun. But yeah, it just looks like a great car. And the point for me, as I say, is please go back and check previous episodes where we go into the details more. But, the Taycan Cross Turismo Turbo S, the really, really quick one that does, 2.7 to 60 and it's got 750 horsepower and all this silly stuff is, 140 grand.
You're forgetting the
base.
off-road pack with a compass, Pete.
Yes, it's the fast ones, 140 grand, 140,000 pound base, and I think I said my high score on the configurator was 175,000. But my point on this is the BMW M3 and M4 have been released recently, and they're of course fossil cars. But the base one of this, the base Taycan Cross Turismo, starts for similar money, about £70,000. So you can only get the Cross Turismo, so this wagon variant, in 4S form, which of course is four-wheel drive. The regular Taycan saloon, you can just get it's just called Taycan and it's two-wheel drive. But
for now,
it starts from about £70,000.
There is a plan.
Yeah, perhaps. But, okay, you'll throw some spec on it and it'll be a little bit more, but why? I don't get this. Why would you buy an M3 or an M4 over this?
Well, it's funny you should raise that point because I think people are starting to. Porsche themselves announced this week that I get the impression that even they were a little surprised that the Taycan has become one of their most important vehicles in the lineup. So
so I think it's the second most sold cars, right? I think it's only the Macan at this point that sells more. And I think I saw some figures the other day that they sold in Q1 that's just gone, so January to March. They sold 14,000-ish Taycans, so just the regular saloon one, in North America alone. Which, 14,000 is not huge compared to Tesla, for instance, or what the ID family are going to sell. But for a premium sports EV, it's a massive number.
I'm very pleased to see it, actually. Very pleased to see it. I don't think it'll be long before they come out with an SUV or a mini SUV EV equivalent. How long so I think do you give it, Pete, before they go pure EV?
Pure EV, I'm not sure. I mean, they've already announced, I think, that the next new Macan will be all electric.
Yeah.
So that kind of ticks the SUV box, if you like. And I think very quickly the 718 car, so like the Boxster and the Cayman, I think there'll be an electrified version of that because kind of they'll have to, especially with EU regulations. They can't just sell a few Taycans and a few Macans and hope to even out the rest of their product portfolio. But I think Porsche have said they're going to continue with the Panamera, but I can't see it at this point.
No,
yeah,
I think they would do
Taycan's
very well with
a great car.
Yeah, but I think they do well with a Cayman / Boxster equivalent. I think an EV variant of them would do very well because you can't really get something of that size and that format, if you like, in EV currently. I know that we've got performance vehicles coming. There's the elusive Tesla Roadster. That's how many years ago was that announced?
Best part of 4 years, right?
It's been a while.
2017, I think it was. It was the one more thing when they launched the semi truck.
That's right, because they drove it out the back, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So but no, great news. Update. It's a great car.
Speaking of great cars.
Ooh, segue.
Another segue. So again, going back to podcasts of old, we talked about an offering from South Korea, the Hyundai Ioniq 5. Journalists are starting to get their hands on this car as well here in the UK. I know that there have been some videos from YouTubers, influencers, other channels here in the UK and also abroad, but reviews have been astonishingly good, actually. Very good feedback about this car. And the one that was driven certainly here in UK is pre-production, so I guess early trial phase vehicle. It looks great. It's got technology in it that seems to work. Got some interesting features. Yeah, I'm excited by this car, and I think if you look back in recent history about kind of vehicles that have changed the face of a brand, let's take the 500 of Fiat, that kind of turned that brand around. I can see this car as being a turning point for Hyundai, however you say it. It's going to be popular, I think, this one. I know they've sold out of the special editions, the early special editions already.
Yeah, I like and an interesting contrast to the GTX. So I think that the top level Ioniq 5, as you say, the launch edition and the quick one will have a very similar sort of 300 horsepower, the four-wheel drive. So one motor on the front, one motor on the back as the ID4 GTX we just talked about. But the 0 to 60 time is, I think 5 and a bit seconds. So it's like a second quicker, which okay, a second is not much, but, between 6 and 5, that's a 20% difference. So, and whilst this is a hatchback, it is a kind of a jacked up hatchback if you look at it. Yeah. And I think it's about £40,000 or around that. So
it's estimated at just under 45,000. Of course, different variants. So different battery sizes. Range is estimated at 255. But I wouldn't mind betting that at some point there'll be an N version mentioned. So N line is Hyundai's performance equivalent, like AMG for Mercedes, or the GTX, as we've talked about earlier. That would be an exciting prospect if they were to introduce an N version. But again, we've talked about styling being subjective in the past, but I'm a big fan of this.
Yeah, it's kind of that kind of Honda-y, isn't it, where it's kind of retro futurism, where, it kind of looks modern, but it also looks very retro as well. But on the interior...
Speaking of retro, did you see they also released a rendering of one of their classic cars? I think it's the Pony, where they had updated and refreshed a car of old that they have built into an EV. So they put kind of the Ioniq 5 signature lamps on it and some different wheels. It looks great. Really good. For anybody that's after a bit of nostalgia with a modern twist, look up the Hyundai Pony EV concept.
Yeah, so and it might be pseudo retro on the outside, but the inside just seems to be full of tech. But it seems to be tasteful, like it's it's kind of got a monolith display, if you like. So it's got two I think about 12-inch displays, so one in front of the driver and one in the centre, as you would imagine. And when you think about it, the most recent S-Class that's just been retired and just been replaced had twin 12-inch screens, and now you've got a relatively affordable family car doing the same sort of thing.
Correct.
But I think one of the greatest things I've seen, and it was a great bit of, well, not telly, but a great bit of YouTube, was a nod of the cap to someone else, is Johnny Smith from I think it's called the Late Break Show now. It used to be called Car Pervert, but you can well imagine why he did away with that name. But one of the great things on the Ioniq 5 is he's got vehicle to X. So you get a little adapter that you stick in the car's charging port that on one end obviously plugs into the car, and the other end is a a conventional
regular
outlet. So
plug
obviously
socket.
so a 3-pin socket here, or whatever socket in the US or whatever EU country you're in, and he plugged it into a bouncy castle.
That's right. Yeah.
So you can run bouncy castles off of your Ioniq 5.
I think,
but you could run anything off it, right? A kettle, a toaster. It doesn't have to be a bouncy castle.
Fully charged, so we're also charging another EV from this vehicle. I mean, it will be slow, but it shows it's possible. Yeah, that's a great solution. That's really thinking laterally and doing something genuinely useful. You're not going to worry about your 12-volt fridge anymore in the back of your car if you go camping, because you actually have a large-scale battery right next to you. You can run, I don't want to say a cooker, but you can certainly draw enough current to power maybe a kettle or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the output is. I think it's maybe 3 and a bit kilowatts. But as you say, you're not going to run a tumble dryer or an oven off of it. But yeah, a fridge or a compressor, for an airbed or a boat or something like that.
Certainly charge your phone.
An inflatable one, that is.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. And as you said in podcast past, where it would be great to have a static battery in your house, especially if you've got solar. Why pay for one when you've got a car sat outside? And I think even the small version of this one, it's got a 50-something kilowatt hour battery, and the big one's got a 70-something kilowatt. Well, that's immeasurably bigger than any static home battery
Tesla
storage. So
yeah, it's tiny by comparison.
Yes,
I am still waiting for somebody to offer a wall box I can bolt to the side of my house, and I can control the power that I suck out the car. Please, anybody answer my prayers. That would just negate the need to buy a power wall or a dedicated equivalent. It would help definitely the cost of entry, because you could offset the price of the vehicle from the outset.
Yeah, it's a great little car.
It is, yes, and I think they'll build on this success with their eGimp platform that we've discussed in podcasts gone by as well. Well, that covers everything on my quick list.
Your list.
Did you want to talk about Tesla?
Oh, it's just something that irked me.
You love numbers.
Well, yeah. I mean, full disclosure. I'm personally invested in Tesla, so take that with a grain of salt or whatnot. But yeah, I just found it fascinating. Obviously, Tesla posted their Q1 earnings, so from January to March of this year. And not only did they sell more cars than that period last year, they also, their revenue, so the money they took in, increased by I think over 70%. And yet the stock nosedived, which it just baffles me, right? And the big one, and it gets wheeled out every quarter, is Tesla only make money because of regulatory credits. So for people that aren't aware, of course, in the EU and in the US as well, manufacturers are required to sell a certain amount of zero emission vehicles, either to meet a fleet average in Europe, or they just need to sell a certain quantity of zero emission vehicles, as in the US. So people seem to confuse it. It's Tesla's not getting a government handout or a subsidy. It's OEMs, auto manufacturers in the US, basically aren't pulling the weight, and they're having to pay Tesla basically to buy zero emission credits. But when you look, Tesla are making, I think when you look at there's two things. It's called GAAP, so generally accepted accounting practices, and non-GAAP. Sort of 23-24% margin, and it's still 20% once you remove those regulatory credits. So they made around a billion this quarter, kind of half of which was from selling vehicles, about 400 and some million, and another 500 million from selling credits, and actually some from selling Bitcoin as well. But even when you take out regulatory credits, because that will go away eventually when other manufacturers catch up. I've been told competition's coming for a long while, but Tesla is still profitable even without that, and still growing roughly at 50% a year. So
their profit margin on cars, we talked about this a little bit earlier, is really rather good for a high volume manufacturer, and I do class them as that now. So we've talked about Porsche in earlier episodes. Their profit margins are huge, but they are what I would class as a lower volume performance manufacturer. So it's typically easier, particularly with their brand strength as well, to get a higher profit margin. But question, what is the profit margin of a typical Tesla model?
Yes, that's when you look, as I say, when you go through they put out kind of a statement that's got all the facts and figures, and it's quite a boring document on their investor relations page. If you go to ir.tesla.com, you can download that if you really want to switch through it. But yeah, it's over 20% is automotive margin.
That's astonishing.
Even exclude.
So
yes, so Porsche, as you mentioned, is a really good example, because generally for them to go to market on any product that they make, they're kind of, I don't know how you would say it, but basically they lock in a 20% margin. So if they know they can't make a 20% margin, they don't do it. And equally, they won't sell a car if it doesn't make a 20% margin. But of course, they're in the position where they can do that. They can just price for it and customers will buy it. And I'm sure, as you say, that's similar to other performance manufacturers. So whether it's for a Ferrari or Lamborghini or something like this. So but for a mass market manufacturer to make that kind of margin is
they would only
basically
dream of
unheard of.
Type of profit. Yeah. 2, 3, 4, 5% at best for mass manufacture, pile them high, sell them cheap type of product.
Yeah. So it's as I say, it's unheard of, really, and I think that's kind of not been looked at. And one of the things is, again, without getting too weeds in too deep into the weeds, when you look at, it's called SG&A costs, right? So sales and general administrative costs. There's a lot of stock-based compensation. So for folks that aren't aware, basically Elon gets a salary but doesn't cash it in. But he has a very lucrative compensation package, which basically he gets to buy cheap shares of the company. And of course, the company has to make up the difference. So he kind of gets compensation for performance. And of course, Tesla's stock price and revenue has gone through the roof in recent years. So that's why he's become such a wealthy man. But of course, as part of that compensation plan, when they hit certain milestones that were agreed by shareholders, the company has to make up the difference between between the agreed share price, which was set some years ago, and of course the share price today is huge. But again, similar, it's the reverse story to the automotive, the regulatory credit. Is that stock-based compensation, which is kind of bringing profit down today, will eventually go away. Once his compensation plan is paid out, then there's no drag on it anymore. So again, it's not a one-time thing, but it's a short-term thing when you're looking at a company which is probably going to be around for some time to come. But
essentially, what he has is performance-related pay.
Yes, exactly. So I can't remember what it is. I think he's got a nominal salary, I think, of $100,000 a year, but he's never really cashed it in. And based on when you look at his compensation plan, he has a revenue target, so how much money they take in, and market capitalization, so basically how much the stock price is worth, and of course then how much the company is worth, and certain margins he gets, I think, so many stocks, and of course as the stock price goes up, so does the value therein of each tranche. So as you say, he gets paid for performance. So when you look at the length of his compensation plan, which has been in effect now, I think, for a few years and will go on for a few more years as well, I don't think any shareholder 2 or 3 years ago that agreed to his compensation plan would be unhappy with the performance of Tesla in that time period.
No.
The share price has gone through the roof. Of course, they're going to be happy, but as I say, that stock-based compensation is obviously still a big burden on the company today, but will eventually go away. But when you look at automotive gross margin, I'm just looking at it now. In this quarter, it was 26.5%. So basically, they're making 26.5% per car. Now, of course, there's other things that go down, and that dilutes down to, I think, 5 and a bit percent, like operating margin, when you're taking all the other stuff, right? Servicing and Tesla Solar and all the rest of it. But to be making an automotive gross margin of over 20%, that's just crackers for what is effectively a mainstream car.
It's exceptionally rare. It's exceptionally rare. Well, we know we're relatively close to the thingy, but we won't talk about that. But
no, let's not talk about the thingy.
It's remarkably. It's just a very successful position they put themselves in, frankly.
Yeah, and as I said, I'm personally invested, so take whatever I say with a pinch of salt. But I think if people really drill down into the numbers behind Tesla and all the things they're doing, then they can make their own judgment on where Tesla's going to be from a long-term point of view. But anyway, yes. So I think that's it for this week, isn't it?
I think that's very much it for this week. Another 45 or so minutes. Again, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us here on the PlugBox Podcast. Do listen back to some of the old episodes and like and subscribe on YouTube. That would help us remarkably. Otherwise, I think we'll adjourn for now, and we'll meet again next week. Sound good?
Same time, same place.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Good night.
Cheers, Pete.
Bye now.